discussed about the major things around Gen AI and how we are kind of building use cases around generative AI and other things. So in this panel, I think I put a few questions. Let's start with, as we all know, there's a lot of investment going on in generative AI. And we see that with the results, all these big firms, the results that are coming out, right? Like whether it is the NVIDIA, the chips, or whether all these hyperscaler platforms who are investing a lot. So, but we have to see at some point of time, we have to understand, are we getting the required return on investments? So let us talk about that a bit more today. Maybe I'll start with Srini, you.
I was trying to hide that.
You're sitting right next to me, so I thought like you. So what are some of the examples of how, or examples, I shouldn't say examples, but if you implement it in the right way, what kind of ROI you can find in your businesses and industries?
Sounds good. Great question. And I'm going to give you some practical experience and examples of some of this. But for starters, my name is Srini. I'm the CIO of Smart Global Holdings, SGH, and it's probably the most unique company in the Valley. We went 3 times public, 4 times private, and I'm lucky to be a part of all those journeys here. And I know I've got a lot of friends here, people that I've known for a long time. Love it, good to see you. So the question is around what is the practical implementation of this, and how do you quantify the success or the failure of this? Okay, first off, I think this is a case personally. I tell you, after 25 years of IT experience, at some point you get bored. You get so bored because you've done the same. I've done about 19 M&A projects and all that, some of which knowledge was part of. You get bored of doing the same SAP, you get bored of the same technology products that evolved and Salesforce, analytics, whatever. Okay. And in my life at that point, I was thinking, what next? We pretty much covered everything. And then along the time, I'm going to also, let's leverage the previous panel's situation, suggestion about a fun fact. That was great, by the way. My fun fact was we are a GPU infrastructure company. In many ways, we integrate the large clusters, GPUs, and all that. So when you talk about HPC, AI supercomputing, that's what we do. And I was one of the members of a team that tested an LLM in 2019. And the different project code name and all that. It was like teaching calculus to an infant. But the first time was absolutely pulling hair out, and I'm thinking, okay, where is this going? Actually, I don't see any value here, and what are we going to do? Anyway, that was many fun facts along the way when that was more hallucination than actually answers. Okay, today at least you got the answers and a little bit of hallucination. Completely opposite, and the company that we're doing it is really within a mile here. We build some great infrastructure. So when you start building this kind of infrastructure for your customers, right, the CDO and our board, got the who's world, technology world, will ask you that same question. Great job, guys. You're doing great things for your customers. What are you doing internally in IT, for AI or for the company? And before they ask, you have to be prepared for something like that. So in our situation, we went through, again, like I said, I was already bored of what I was doing. And I wanted to do something, our team wanted to do something better. So we leveraged our old classical method again. We went back to the users. But this time when we went back to the users, right, we had a very clear agenda. What is the team doing? What is purchasing doing? From 8 to 9:30, 90 minutes of their time, okay, of the first hour. And then we wanted to understand everything that they're doing, okay? And then that is, and we did the same thing with finance, we did the same thing with CSRs, we did the same thing across the company. And then, and by the way, this is something that we didn't do in 2019. We literally did this in the last 6 to 8 months as technology improved on that. And we built a use case just to cater to their needs. And it was not just Gen AI, it was a combination of automation, AI, and Gen AI. And I think the result was extremely much more productive than using just one of those, what I said, automation or AI. If I used one of them, then the result would have still been productive, but the combination of it really saved a lot more in terms of getting good data for them. We're going to talk a little bit more later. I don't want to steal your time. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, that's a
Can I follow up on this one?
Yeah, sure, you can go ahead.
So, hey guys, I'm Datta Junarkis, CIO Maritime Division at Boeing. Anybody heard the name Boeing? Yeah. So, I think I'm part of Boeing Defense, and we have there are about 7 different business units part of our portfolio, which are all autonomous and manned space, right? So, autonomous and manned submarine, refueling jet, drone. Then autonomous and manned, ocean robots, quite a few different things which are part of the portfolio. So when you look at anything autonomous and manned, AI will always be part of it, right? IoT, AI will always be part of it. Specifically going back to Jilly asked your question about it, right? So I think AI, we have been doing it for a long time, right? So I think because of autonomous space, generative AI, last year when suddenly we hear the OpenAI talking about ChatGPT, a lot of interest came across from everybody, like, hey, what we can try, what we want to do it. So what we did first is like we gave the training. We said like we are not going to block anybody, but this is what the company policy is. You are not going to use company data for any kind of AI or generative AI stuff. But we gave the training, mandatory training across the board, starting from CEO to individual contributors about what really AI is, what really generative AI is, what are the security risks around it. And then we kind of like, not only that, we said, you have interest, come to us and we can help you with that. Right? So at a BU level, not at division, enterprise level, division level, BU level, we actually formed the committees and we said, we have use cases, go to them and then we can actually figure out which one we can prioritize. Specifically, and I divide those into like 3 categories. One is like, a quick wins kind of situation. Second one is one which is basically low investment but quick returns, right? And the time to value is also not as much. So I can give you an example. In that case, is more like Microsoft 365 Copilot. Many of you are already using it, right? So I think simple thing like you have meeting at the end of the meeting, generated meeting notes. Right? Not only that, people who are, being defense, we all have to submit the time sheets. That is the requirement for us. How many people attended, create basically at the end of it attendance report and really integrate the time management system so your times already populated. The value you are getting the value, but it's not as exponential value. Right? But it's a quick invest. We didn't invest a whole lot on it. It is something out of the box that we bought it and basically made some changes to it. When you look at medium kind of stuff, same thing. What I look at it is like more like a differentiate kind of between quick wins versus the strategic or transformation stuff. So what we did in that case, I can give you an example about talent management. Right? So we have, I take an analogy of a 100-meter race. So if you look at 100-meter race, only one person will get gold, one person will get silver and bronze, right? But doesn't make the person who won the race or got a gold medal is clearly a winner, but doesn't make like the silver, bronze, or third or fourth people are the back candidates, right? They are also equally good candidates. So when you are hiring, right, in talent, we always ignore the talent database that we already have. A lot of resumes we already have it. We always go and basically try to fetch candidates from outside and waiting for resumes to basically come in. So we started basically building that using some small language models as a part of it. And what we did is like we look at existing resumes and figure out how we can basically pull the right talent, right? And not only that, also as a part of talent management stuff, many times internal requirements, we also have candidates who are ready to basically move across the board, right? So how do we basically use existing people, right, who has got skills, And basically, instead of we hiring somebody from outside who's existing talent and basically let them hire for this role, because they are also looking for doing something. Maybe there are many people who are bored, so that's what we are trying to do in this case. Sorry. Yeah. And then third, I look at more like a transformational piece of it, right? So I take an example. I mean, this is which requires a lot more investment. This is not something. Time to value is probably longer, more than 2 years or something, and we have to build your own large language models. And I take example of contract management. So if you look at defense space, right, there are very unique terms. What we look at is like a far deeper kind of stuff. That is in the US Department of Defense space, right? Anybody who is in the DoD space can understand it. When you look at international ones, they have their own kind of similar legal jargons which are there and clauses which are there, right? And oftentimes it's always a challenge between business development team and the legal team, because the business development want results right away because they really want to sign the contracts quickly, versus legal do not want to make sure that there are no risks and they identify all the risks before signing the contract, right? So, and leadership really want to know what are the risks and what are the challenges before we accept or sign the contract. So that's when we basically build these funds where you got like 500-page contract, right? So business development want that information right away. So how do you basically create a quick summary what a contract is all about? What are the risks that we need to be paying attention to? So that way we can actually really put the focus areas saying, hey, these are the risks that we should be negotiating with the customers. So those are like some of the areas that we can talk about. In terms of implementation, where we are, I think like Microsoft Copilot, which is quick writing, which we already implemented, we have been using it, we are seeing great results out of it, right? The talent management, we have been using it already, that is already in production. The last one, which is more like a transformational, what I talk about, where it's like one single system which can be used globally across the board. That is currently, in works right now, it's not in the production. And really, I think the way I look at it is, the technology will change, it is changing rapidly, and it will change, right? So I'm really focusing on quick wins and midterm and daily strategy. Strategy, this is a very unique one that we want to do it, but others we are saying that let's wait and watch. And we are not ignoring it, we are paying attention to it, but at the same time, we are looking at the technology stack and see how we can actually go along with it. And along with that, another challenge that we face is government regulations. If many people do not know, but I think government came back this week itself with the regulation that you cannot use generative AI for certain set of data sets, right? Some of the stuff we are already piloting it, now we cannot use it, right? So that regulation, in Europe or some countries, they are already saying that you cannot use AI. So I think government regulations will come. So you have to be mindful about it when you are making the investment, right? So what the impact will be down the road in the future.
Sure. I think that's a great way that you put. Now I think I'll come to you, Josh. I think from Fiddler's standpoint, I know like both Srini and Data, they gave great thoughts about how do you measure or how do you get this return on investment. From Fiddler's standpoint, or from what you're working there, or maybe your personal thoughts about, you will be facing a lot of challenges when you're trying to showcase this, and then you have to kind of allocate the budget as well. So what are your thoughts on that? Because there are some short-term gains, there are some long-term gains. How do you weigh that and how do you allocate budget?
This is an interesting question, right? And I think I'll start by commending Data and Boeing on taking a proactive approach and having policy, having some sort of well-circulated set of guidelines for kind of what's allowed and what's not. Because I think the thing, Fiddler is an AI observability platform. We try to help our customers implement sort of best practices for not just understanding models and their weaknesses, but being able to respond when the world changes in some way that might get unexpected. So this data drift problem comes up all the time. The anecdote I like to point to is a large bank that we were talking to that's running a chatbot. was unprepared for questions about the impact of Silicon Valley Bank's crash on their customers' savings, questions about FDIC insurance, right? So suddenly the world changed in some way that this model's not prepared for. So just to give you some context, our tooling is broad and covers a wide variety of industries in a very general way. So just to bring it back to this, concept of a uniform policy, I think this may be the exception in a way, right? I think what we see when we're talking to customers is that, most of them have just spent, a year spending a lot of money on generative AI experiments, right? Like nothing is in production, but we have 100 LLMs for different applications that we've been trying to use across 30 different teams, right? And so in the absence of some sort of coherent policy for, how governance is supposed to happen, how you measure ROI, how you measure things like, data drift and ongoing model performance, where there might be, there's value in this thing, but also risk of financial or reputational harm if something happens in the world that your model's not prepared for, or it makes an oopsie and, like this Air Canada case where this model has, basically, given somebody away cheap tickets, because of hallucination. What we see is that, a lot of companies that aren't prepared for this, you end up with a hodgepodge of different governance practices, homegrown tools, commercial tools, and there's a huge amount of inefficiency that's incurred by not doing something, both either policy-wise or tool-wise, to standardize. So, I don't know, in terms of, the short-term versus the long-term question, I think taking a moment and being sort of coherent about, not having teams doing lots of calculations in Excel to determine the, biannual performance of their model is going to be really key, right? There's that operational efficiency to stand up. I guess the one other point I would make here is that, these RAG use cases, summarizing our internal docs or summarizing our customer service, and doing these data summary tasks. This is sort of your opportunity to develop good governance practices before these LLM applications get really complicated and hard. This is sort of the wiffle ball version, right? So, one way to look at this is, develop the muscle for coherent governance of these things. It's probably worth a little bit of investment because, we're going to get this agentic world where, our users are going to be interacting very deeply and in complex workflows with these things. And, it's only going to get harder from here to sort of instrument these things in a efficient and responsible way. So maybe I'll stop there. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
Good. I think, yeah, you were getting there. I think now I'll move to you, Sudeep. Maybe I think you're with DoorDash.
Yeah.
So I believe that is a different kind of a space.
Yes.
And now for you, how do you guys anticipate the short-term gains versus long-term gains when you
Yeah.
invest a lot in generative AI? Because that's going to be a big thing for you.
Yeah, and I think like it's a very specific use case, and it's a three-sided marketplace, and there's like many applications in all the sort of edges between these three sides. Just before that, like I'm Sudeep, I head up the machine learning org at new verticals, which is everything that DoorDash does that's not restaurant delivery. So all the new verticals that are emerging. If you look at the app, you'll see that it's like grocery, convenience. And so the ML space there is like very complex in the sense that as soon as you enter like non-restaurant space, it just explodes, right? So it's e-commerce scale data that you're talking about. And we have been doing a lot of machine learning in this space, already before this like LLM thing happened. So to kind of like a little bit more grounded way of answering your question, like how do we actually invest in this space, right? So as we saw this, the power of these large language models are essentially, summarization, are basically like having coherent ability to sort of coherently answer questions that can be grounded in your data, in your own catalog using RAG and these types of applications. So we decided to sort of like don't do something where like we throw like tons of LLMs and grow like homegrown stuff right away. So we said like let's go with a relationship with one company first and see how we can leverage it in some of the main use cases where human efficiency is the bottleneck. Okay? So these LLMs are extremely good at replacing humans in certain tasks. And so if you can think of like a concrete use case, right? So as someone was saying in the last panel, every single product we carry, we need to understand its attributes, right? If there's a bag of chips, if you're selling it to someone who is vegan or keto friendly, you need to understand if this thing is actually keto or vegan, right? And to do that through humans, it'll take a long time to go and like look at the label, what are the ingredients, does it have nuts and allergens and all these things. But now you can actually have a multimodal LLM, look at the picture and the textual description and make that a determination for you. And if the LLM cannot do it by itself, if it doesn't have that word knowledge, it can send out agents, search and scrape the web and get you the answer, right? So basically, that's where first investments came, where basically you had this huge army of labelers, human labelers that go out and label things for you, that have been replaced quite a bit. I cannot tell you the exact number, but it's like a huge efficiency gain, right? Then you think about sort of the chat, the more sort of obvious use cases, right? Which is like customer support. Right? Someone is complaining, you have to have a human replying. We already had chatbots and agents there, but now the quality of that has gone through the roof. But again, you have to think of the hallucination and the use case where the agent gives us a humongous discount to the. So we have to be extremely careful about the governance when we sort of start leveraging this new technology. But going back to the short term to the long term and how you actually measure ROI, one of the strategies that we have found is to like sort of first go through all the use cases you have, and many use cases will actually blend traditional ML with LLMs. It's not like, as someone said, not every problem is a GenAI problem, right? So there is problems where GenAI will be useful. There are problems where traditional machine learning or even rule-based things would be very good. You don't need AI there. So what you do as a company is like sort of as a strategy, look at all the use cases, identify a few where you think there might be the biggest ROI, do some proof of concept applications, and then you can do a pre-post or even an A/B test style thing to say like, if I didn't have that element in the mix, how much more money would I be spending in the human equation of this, right? The human part of the equation, or how much faster did the thing become, right? The sort of end-to-end turnaround time. So this is the strategy we have taken. So we identify a few areas, we deployed, and many of them are in production right now. We actually my team put out a blog post just today about how we leveraged it to enrich our product knowledge graph. And then from that you get this sort of an estimate of how much ROI you can get by deploying it in like N out of the 100 use cases you've thought of, right? From there you can sort of like go back and back calculate, like if I now deploy this technology on everything, like you can get a very good idea of where things are going and how much ROI there is. Now then the question is now because you've done POCs, you've done some things which not always very principled. Now you can come back and build the infrastructure, the LLM ops and the ML ops that has to support it. How do you guard against hallucinations? And then like companies like Fiddler AI, like basically you need the support to be able to evaluate the LLM to see where actually the ROI can be very negative because the LLMs are just not good at that one task or one area. So this I think is a great approach to sort of go and prove out some use cases, get the sort of ROI indicators from that. Because I think how much ROI there will be from LLM is an unknown at this point.
Yeah.
So you like start getting the known unknowns addressed first and then go there.
Yeah, great answer, great answer. I know we are running short on time, I believe, for 5 more minutes. So maybe we'll close this, each of you, starting with you, Sudeep. What long-term vision organization should look into when you are kind of getting into this?
Yeah, I think like it's it's sort of like, one part of this is organizational. So what should be the sort of distribution of talent now that there's like Gen AI? So, like every company has some, investments in engineering, machine learning, but there's this like new trait of engineers that are coming up through like they have this skill set. But I think as a company, long term, we should think of investing in actually like growing people that can, leverage this technology, the education part of it, and that leads to enormous efficiency gains. Obviously, the coding, co-pilot things are great, but also like, a product manager can write a very effective, RFC for something in like half the time with Gen AI, right, than they used to. So that's like one part in the long term. I think it's change of the workforce essentially. Right? And then the other part is building robust systems, right? So long term, as I said, like the ROI is unknown, but it is there. We know, right? And with every sort of technological innovation, it has been there. But there's a lot of ways things can go wrong, and if you don't invest in the right infrastructure and monitoring and governance, then things will go wrong. So that's the other sort of long-term kind of thing that companies need to think about, right? And then the third thing is like you need to have a sort of an incubation or innovation group in the company that's constantly thinking about what's next, right? And not all companies will be building foundational models, but the biggest implication of having LLMs in the mix would be how to leverage them to your use case, right? This would be like some open source stuff. How can you bring it in-house and then adapt it to your use case, right? So those are like sort of three vectors that I think would be most important, sort of long term going into this. So it's a little more technological point of view, but I'll probably just pass it on to.
Maybe just a very brief. I'll address this in the tooling perspective, right? I think that the way that we, I would encourage people to think about LLMs, models is as applications rather than individual machine learning things, right? It's a collection of maybe language models, maybe data sets that are indexed in different ways, a variety of tools that help constrain the behavior of the model and check on its behavior and make sure it's not doing, making obvious mistakes. And, I think there's a theme that's, if you can address these problems in a simple way, you don't need LLMs necessarily for every problem. There's a variety of kind of scaffolding, some machine learning, some rule-based tools that you can build around your application to ensure that it's giving you the best quality with the most safety at each step. Of course, we would argue that a huge piece of that also is having, a robust MLOps practice, so you can observe how this thing is behaving over time. And
you basically train them into like generative AI and other species, right? More like training and how do you basically get the most value out of it, right? Oftentimes, like your data scientists and others who really don't understand the domain, they are not domain experts, right? So how do you basically cross-train in those areas, right? So that is one part I'm really focusing quite a bit on, upskilling, cross-skilling the existing employee talent, right? That is, and really like work with your employees because a lot of ideas are getting generated from your internal employee pool, right? So how do you, instead of ignoring those ideas, how do you basically create an environment where where ideas will get generated and basically you can drive those ideas to get a better value and better results. That's a lot of focus. Technology is changing, it is rapidly changing, right? So I'm not, whatever they have said is perfectly right, but I think I'm not going to say more about it. But really I think focusing internally as well as talking with the customers and understanding the use cases as well as internal use cases and rightly prioritizing it. That's my focus.
Beautiful. Over to you, Srini. Any closing remarks?
I think it's important also to understand the challenges. And I started with my 90-minute story of, we went to all the main business users, started and asking them, what do you do for the first 90 minutes? Okay, and some would come up and say, okay, I enter order. Let me take the example of the customer service reps. They were doing three things. One was replying to customers on the status of the orders. Three statuses: cancel, where they have convinced the customer, change orders, meaning push out, again convince the customers, and then everything got shipped as promised. Don't need to spend much time. So we took those orders. Okay, every morning as soon as the CSR arrives, there's a daily digest. Okay, which tells us here are the orders. Here's cancel, changed, and then shipped. And then The second activity that the CSRs would do is communicate to the customers on email saying, hey, here's what happened. So we also leverage the LLM to put a story again. The first two things on how the data comes is a mix of automation and AI. Okay, and the third one is where we used LLMs to provide a wrapper. Okay, and then the fourth one, the third activity that the CSRs did in their first 90 minutes was to enter orders. EDI takes a lot of the B2B takes care of a lot of things, but we still have orders coming in from email. So we also gave them the AI agent that they could just take the file out and then push it into the agent, and then it will display the metadata and all that, and then they can approve it and goes into SAP and all that. There's again challenges around it because we were so excited to replace EDI, we didn't realize the challenges that a document model can bring in. So a lot of learnings, we could take it offline. But you have to create this kind of a measurable thing. Once we had success with the CSRs, immediately we had reach out from other teams, okay, including the head of procurement called me and said, hey, can we also get into the same? We're not doing anything different. We're doing the same thing what CSRs are doing with the customers, we're doing with purchasing with our suppliers. We need to ask the same questions. We need to find the challenges in our supply chain. So things like that, and then started kind of a, the word spreads if it's good or bad. So we've had more reach out from the business. That's how we were able to quantify, and then I've got several bruises and bleeds along the way that we can share off.
Beautiful, beautiful. Do we have some time for questions from the audience?
I think we're going to take a quick break and we can mingle and talk amongst ourselves during that time and do some networking.
Beautiful. Thanks a lot. I think it's an honor and a pleasure to host such a great panel. Thank you all.